In this video, we are going to look at how each region of the country voted in every presidential election since 1960. I could go back even more. No, wrong map. I could go back even more. I could flip through as to how regions of the country voted going all the way back to the 1800s and even into the, 1700s if we really want to. But I'm not going to do that because that would just be a waste of everyone's time. But I'm going to show some trends of how places voted in every election. Swing states I'll do in a separate video, just because I feel like the issue with the swing states is that, they are also difficult to determine because if an election is a landslide, like swing states don't really matter that much. And the other problem that I have is that going to 1960, you really can't tell trends. Like you really can't tell trends of what a place is going to do. Like you really can't tell that stuff as to like what they're going to do and like how shifts occur in a lot of cases because of what happened in the 50s and 40s. But I just feel like for the interest of both time, because it's late at night and I still have some homework to do, and also in the interest of, well, we don't want to go back to the FDR landslides either. 1960 is a great election to start off with because, as you can see, it was a close and contentious election. Kennedy narrowly won. In the Deep South, you have victories by the Democratic Party, but note Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia voting for Richard Nixon. So that's interesting. Great Plains, most of the West is voting for Kennedy. Nevada, New Mexico, Hawaii are the exceptions, but most of the West is voting for Nixon in this one. How did Kennedy win the election? He won most of the Northeast, excluding northern New England, and he also, and I'd say that they both split, the Midwest pretty easily, especially around Rust Belt, Great Lakes region. They both split it pretty evenly. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, and Missouri went to Kennedy, but Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio went to Nixon. 1964 is a very obvious Democratic landslide. Ironically, the Deep South is actually what's voting for Goldwater here, which in a lot of cases was actually a very recent development. He also won his home state of Arizona, but even that was what he barely won it. It's actually, I think, a little bit ironic when you realize what happened in 1964. I think it's a little bit ironic what happened when you look at 1964 because in a lot of places, this is the first time that a lot of states elected a Democrat. In like a lot of places, I mean, it's not really, it's not like, I don't know, it's not like, it was, I'm stuttering. It's like the first time that happened in a long time, so I think it's ironic that it happened in a Democratic landslide, which you can clearly tell it was a Democratic landslide. 1968, another close election, this time a win for Nixon. Nixon, again, his real base of support is in the West. Besides from Hawaii and Washington, Nixon pretty much sweeps the West. In the Deep South, many of them vote for George Wallace, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the last time a third party would receive any electoral college votes. We would see, again, Humphrey's main base of support was in the Northeast, where except for Vermont and New Hampshire, New Jersey and Delaware, he carried all the states. The Rust Belt, I'd say for the most part, voted for Nixon, but he had some victories. Humphrey had some victories in this region, and then, of course, Texas. And the Southeast voted Republican in areas that Wallace didn't win. 1972, Massachusetts is the lone blue state, well, along with D.C., but D.C. is always voting Democratic. There's literally been one election in D.C. history where a Democrat won by less than 15%. Again, you could see where Nixon's base of support was the weakest, but, he still won those states. you could really tell, that this is a very big Democratic landslide. It's 1976, another close and contentious election. The South, pretty much, except for Virginia, all votes for Jimmy Carter, which makes sense because Jimmy Carter, is a Democrat from Georgia. And the West, except for Hawaii, goes entirely for Gerald Ford. The Great Lakes region, again, you have New York and Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and I guess if you include Missouri in the region, voting for Carter, but the rest of it is voting for Gerald Ford. Even in the Northeast, you have some splits. You have Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, as well as New Jersey, going for the for the Republicans, but the rest of it, like Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, is going for the Democrat. 1980, Minnesota, West Virginia, Maryland, Georgia, Rhode Island, Hawaii are the lone red states. Even Massachusetts votes for Reagan, which when you realize how liberal Massachusetts is, kind of tells you a lot. But then again, he barely won the state of Massachusetts. So it's just kind of scattered where his support was. 1984, a Republican landslide, except for Minnesota, which Mondale barely won, and it was his home state. It's a sweep for the Republicans, but notice where it's not shaded in as dark of a red, because when you flip to 1988, like you can sort of see the lighter states, for the most part, are the ones that go Democrat. It's relatively easy to foreshadow how that's going to happen. And again, still a big win for the Republican Party. But as you can see here, there's some states he doesn't win, like Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and West Virginia. Which is actually ironic how West Virginia was a left-leaning state back in the 80s, when you realize how staunchly Republican the state is to this day. But 1992 would be a huge win for Clinton, and you could even see the Northeast. Clinton sweeps the Northeast. He wins every single state in the Northeast. Southeast, he still makes significant inroads in the Deep South. Louisiana, Arkansas, Georgia, they all vote for Clinton. So you can sort of tell how it's going to go in this election. The Great Lakes, except for Indiana, it's all voting for Clinton in that area. The West, only a few states vote for Bush. Alaska, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming do, but even Montana votes for Hillary Clinton. Great Plains, that region, Bush still sweeps, but again, big win for Democrats. And a lot of this is because of Ross Perot, but he won't be shown as having any electoral votes, even though he had a big influence in a lot of these elections. 96, Perot's influence weakens significantly, and Clinton's victory strengthens. The Deep South, except for Louisiana and Arkansas, is voting for the Democrats, and Florida does flip blue as well. Fun fact, in 1996, Florida voted as soon as the polls closed. It was Louisiana that was the only state that was above 2.4%. That was not called for Clinton as soon as the polls were closed. Again, sweeps the Northeast and wins by at least 9% in that region. Indiana is the only Great Lakes state to vote for the Republican Party. This entire alley does vote for Dole still. He does sweep this Great Plains region, but the rest of the West, except for Alaska, votes for Clinton. 2000 is a very interesting election. This is probably the closest election in U.S. history. And the entire southeast U.S., Bush sweeps it. Crucial to his victory. The only state he won in the Northeast was the state of New Hampshire. The Great Lakes area is pretty evenly split. You do have Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois voting for the Democrats, but then you have Indiana and Ohio voting for the Republicans. So I guess it's not really that split. This area, Clinton sweeps most of the West, but he does lose New Mexico and the Pacific Coast states. He does win Alaska. 2004, close but a bit more decisive in favor of Bush this time. But he does lose the entire Northeast, but he does win the entire Southeast. And again, he wins all of the West except for the Pacific Coast states. He does win Alaska. And you can see he makes some inroads in the Midwest because he does flip Iowa to his side, which Iowa is a strong, Republican-leaning state now, but it was a Democrat-leaning state for a while, and then it was a swing state. Iowa's had many different political transformations, as you could see over the years. It's a bit of a political unicorn where it just seems to switch, like, all the time. And that was that. 2008, huge win for Barack Obama. Sweeps the entire Northeast and makes significant inroads in the Southeast, flipping Florida, flipping Virginia, and even flipping North Carolina. Virginia hadn't voted for a Democrat in 64, North Carolina in 76, and yet both of them flipped to Obama. Of those states, Virginia would continue to vote Democratic ever since, and it's since become a lot more politically aligned with the Northeast. North Carolina would revert to voting for Republicans, but it would always be close. Even Indiana votes for Obama, so he sweeps the entire Great Lakes region, I guess, if you exclude Missouri, but I wouldn't really consider Missouri to be a Great Lakes region anyway. I mean, while McCain can sweep the Great Plains, it is not as safe as usual. And in the West, really except for Arizona, Utah, Idaho, in the real West, it's swept by Obama. I mean, Obama also loses Alaska, but it was a huge win for them. Also, Obama even wins Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, just to show you how Democratic favorable this election was, and only Indiana and North Carolina flip in 2012, and Nebraska's 2nd district. The rest of it stays consistent. 2016. Trump finally makes huge inroads in the blue wall. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin flip blue. So except for Minnesota and Illinois, the Great Lakes region is all behind Trump. And Trump even wins Pennsylvania, but he loses the rest of the Northeast except for Maine's 2nd congressional district, which is actually funny how much it swung from, consistently voting for Democrats along the rest of Maine into where it is now, where Trump somehow managed to win it by 10.3 percentage points. But again, the West, it stays the same. Southeast, except for Virginia is won by Trump, but not a whole lot of change outside of that. And also Florida, Ohio, and Iowa. 2020, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania revert back, and Georgia and Arizona make it even closer. Now Biden makes more inroads in the West, and he gets the blue wall states back to his side. And even Georgia in the deep South flips, as well as Arizona. But all those states that flipped in 2020 flip back in 2024, plus Nevada. And this is what you're left with now. A lot of the recent elections have been relatively close. I think what it is that in a close election also, when I do my swing states video, they'll matter more. I probably won't be able to really discuss swing states in landslide elections, and I'll see when I do that video on swing states. But again, it would have to be a close election. It has to be a swing state to actually matter.